Ballabha Hirivarudhauti Yasuranandana Prajajana Ranjana Yasuranandana Prajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tera Panachati Yamuna Tera Panachati Jayarat Bhuma Bhuma Kunyavihare Jayarat Bhuma Bhuma Kunyavihare Haribo 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 Hachibo Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravidikacharya also Teta Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace Abhaya Chananada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anandakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Hridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Sri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radhakrishna Gopa Gopinath Sayam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturadam Ki Jai Jagadasami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai Sambhaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pacharni Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dejatarni. So, I believe we're reading from 1st Canto, 18th chapter, text 31. Is that right? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Esha King Nibrita Shesha Karano Milekshana. No, I'm sorry. Militekshana Mricha Samadir Ahosvit Kim Nu Shat Shatra Bandhubihi Eshat Kim Nibrita Shesha Karno Militekshana Mrishasamadir hahosvit. Kim nu shat shatrabandhu biki. Esha kim nibrita shesha. Karano militekshanaha. Mrishasamadir hahosvit. Kim nu sat shatrabandhu biki. Esha kim nibrita shesha. Karano militekshanaha. Mrishasamadir hahosvit. Kim nu shat shatrabandhu biki. Okay. Shesha. Ladies. Okay. Eshaha. This. Kim. Whether. Nibrita Achesha. Meditative mood. Karanaha. Senses. Midata. Closed. Ikshanaha. Eyes. Mricha. False. Samadhi. Trance. Aho. Remains. Svit. If it is so. Kim. Either. Nu. But. Syat. Maybe. Shatrabandhuvihi. By the lower Kshatriya. Translation. Upon returning, he began to contemplate and argue within himself whether the sage had actually been in meditation with senses concentrated and eyes closed, or whether he had just been feigning, that means pretending, trance, just to avoid receiving a lower Kshatriya. So you can repeat. Upon returning, he began to contemplate and argue within himself whether the sage had actually been in meditation with senses concentrated, and eyes closed, or whether he had just been feigning trance, just to avoid receiving a lower kshatriya. So purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The king, being a devotee of the Lord, did not approve of his own action, and thus he began to wonder whether the sage was really in a trance or was just pretending in order to avoid receiving the king, who was a kshatriya and therefore lower in rank. Repentance comes in the mind of a good soul, and as soon as he commits something wrong, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Jiva Goswami Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Jiva Goswami do not believe that the king's action was due to his past misdeeds. The arrangement was so made by the Lord just to call the king back home, back to Godhead. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the plan was made by the will of the Lord, and by the will of the Lord, the situation of frustration was created. The plan was that for his so-called misdeed, the king could be cursed by an inexperienced Brahmin boy infected by the influence of Kali, and thus the king would leave his hearth and home for good. His connections with Srila Shukadeva Goswami would enable the presentation of the great Srimad Bhagavatam, which is considered to be the book incarnation of the Lord. This book incarnation of the Lord gives much fascinating information of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, like his Rasa Leela with the spiritual coward damsels of Brajabhumi. This specific pastime of the Lord has a special significance because anyone who properly learns about this particular pastime of the Lord will certainly be dissuaded from mundane sex desire and be placed on the path of sublime devotional service to the Lord. The pure devotee's mundane frustration is meant to elevate the devotee to a higher transcendental position. By placing Arjuna and the Pandavas in frustration due to the intrigue of their cousin brothers, the prelude of the Battle of Kurukshetra was created by the Lord. This was to incarnate the sound representative of the Lord, Bhagavad Gita. So by placing King Parikshit in an awkward position, the incarnation of Srimad Bhagavatam was created by the will of the Lord. Being distressed by hunger and thirst was only a show because the king endured much, even in the womb of his mother. He was never disturbed by the glaring heat of the Brahmastra released by Ashvatthama. The king's distressed condition was certainly unprecedented. The devotees, like Maharaj Parikshit, are powerful enough to forbear such distresses by the will of the Lord, and they are never disturbed. The situation in this case was therefore all planned by the Lord. And again the verse. Esha kim nibrita shesha karano militekshanaha mrisha samadir ahosvit kim nu shatrabandubihi. So, Om Gana Timadanda Shagananjana Shlakaya Chakshuran Medinam Yena Tasmai Shigadave Namaha. So it is obvious that the king's putting the snake around Samika Rishi's neck was not due to his being in Mahamaya. You know, there's two things, Mahamaya and Yogamaya. In other words, we can understand, being a pure devotee of the Lord, the king was in perfect control of his senses, and as we read in the Upadeshamrita, Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krota Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udurpashta Vegam, that the king was a pure devotee. Therefore, he had control of his speech, Vacho Vegam, his mind, Manasa Krota, his anger, his tongue, belly, and genitals. So there's no question of him coming under the control of these things. And then also, being a pure devotee of the Lord, he was not subjected to the 4 defects of the conditioned soul. Everybody knows those 4 defects: tendency to cheat, tendency to be an illusion, imperfect senses, and making mistakes. And of course, we all make mistakes, unless you're pure devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so, that's a very interesting. So how is it possible that he succumbed to thirst? And of course, frustrated thirst or frustrated desire leads to anger, as we find in the Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? Jayato vishaks pumsag sangos tesha pajayate sangat sanjayate kama kama krota vijayate, isn't it? So whenever we see anger, unless we're getting angry at someone who is a rascal, an atheist or something like that, that anger is bona fide. Whenever we see anger, it means that we've been frustrated with some particular desire. And of course, how to deal with anger, that's the subject of another course, which I'm not going to give right now, in empathic communication. But in any case, it means we've been frustrated. So a devotee of the Lord, a pure devotee of the Lord, doesn't succumb to anger, thirst, hunger. I mean, he may be angry, he may be hungry. I mean, just right now, it's past my breakfast time, so I'm definitely hungry, but I'm not going to succumb to and start getting angry with everybody in the middle of class. I'm going to control it, say, all right, hunger, forget about it right now. So that's a pure devotee. So what's happening with Parikshit Maharaj? Well, this is Yogamaya. Now, you may say, all right, Yogamaya, Krishna's making this arrangement. Why does Krishna put his devotees into these difficult circumstances? I thought when I joined the Krishna consciousness movement, everything was going to go well at every moment. Didn't you? You know, I thought peace and love, because I'm a member of the hippie generation, you know. Peace and love, you know, and once you realize you're not the body, you don't experience any difficulties, once you surrender to Krishna, then everything goes well. And we've all experienced, I mean, even I've experienced recently, I tell this story oftentimes in class, that sometimes I pray to Krishna and he doesn't do anything, because he's not my servant. I told this story in many classes, but most of you haven't heard this story. That recently I was driving my car, and I was driving twice the speed limit. And I was thinking, Krishna's going to protect me. I'm a devotee. I'm a sannyasi, dedicated guru. I have all these different positions. So all of a sudden I saw some flashing red lights in back. And I got very nervous, and I started to pray to Lord Nrsingadev. Namaste Narasingaya Palada Lada Dayane Haranyakashipu. Please, Lord Nrsingadev. So anyway, I'm pulled off the road. The police comes out and says, don't you understand you're going twice the speed limit? And I said, I didn't know. I'm sorry. You know, I had so many excuses like everybody has. And then he took my license and he was going to write a ticket, and I thought, oh, I'm going to lose my license, my driving license. And I kept praying to Lord Nrsingadev, please let him forget about giving me a ticket. It didn't work. It didn't work. And I got the ticket, and fortunately, it's Kali Yuga. I'm very happy it's Kali Yuga, because one of the symptoms of Kali Yuga is that if you have money and you hire a lawyer, you can get off with anything, right? Isn't Bhagavatam talks about that? And it worked. My lawyer got me off, but it cost some money. So the point is, why did Krishna put me in this difficult situation? Why didn't he just pull Yogamaya over the policeman, or Mahamaya, whatever you may call it? Because Krishna was teaching me a lesson. He has a purpose behind things. See, that's called theodicy. Theodicy means the justice or the purpose of God. You understand? Theodicy, theos. You know, theos means a religion or godly. And so he was teaching me a lesson. You try to enjoy yourself in this material world, because I was, by speeding. And therefore, whack. You get a slap. Now you have to understand you're supposed to serve me. So it's not that Krishna is our servant, and when Krishna does something to a devotee, he has a specific purpose. Of course, In the case of Parikshit Maharaj, the purpose was not to slap him because he was a rascal, like with me. But his purpose was to carry out a particular pastime, put his devotee into difficulty. And so people hear these stories sometimes. This is interesting. You hear these stories about how devotees are put into difficulty. Jai, Panchatatva ki jai. And it sort of discourages you from wanting to worship Krishna, isn't it? I mean, it really discourages it. There's a story in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita where Narada Muni is going to different devotees. This is the first part of Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And he's praising different devotees as being the best devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he goes to the Pandavas. And he says to the Pandavas, you're the best devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is always there to protect you and everything like that. And the Pandavas say, at least Yudhisthira says, it's not. How could we be the best devotees of the Lord? Because if anyone hears about our pastimes or activities, they'll become discouraged in devotional service. Like if you hear about Queen Kunti, we were talking about her yesterday in class, you hear how she had to be subjected to so many difficulties. Bhimsen there was an attempt to poison him. There was the House of Lac, an attempt to burn her and her sons, and they were in exile, and they had to confront Rakshasas. Of course, Bhimsen ultimately married one of the Rakshasas. There's a happy romantic ending to that story. So, Hidimba. So, Yudhisthira was saying, if people hear about our story, how will they want to become devotees? And Krishna, another point Yudhisthira Maharaj made, was that Krishna only comes around when there's difficulty. So right now, he says, or said, we are thinking of dreaming up some difficulty so Krishna will come again. Because that's the whole story of the Mahabharata. You know, when there's difficulty, Krishna comes. Whenever there's never any difficulty, Krishna goes back to Dwarka. So Yudhisthira is talking like that, and it's just then Yudhisthira has this interesting discussion in the Bhagavatam with Krishna about the same subject matter. It's I believe it's the 88th chapter of the 10th canto, where Yudhisthira Maharaj is asking Krishna, why is it that your devotees have to suffer so much, and generally they're impoverished? And why is it that the devotees of Lord Shiva are usually quite wealthy? Because now I'm going to discourage everybody from worshiping Krishna. I do not talk about this when I'm talking to people from India, because it will not be productive as far as getting people to join the Krishna consciousness movement. Because people from India, generally they're interested in worshiping Krishna or worshiping for money. Lakshmi. They have actually the Lakshmi Puja. And so many. I remember this is funny. There's one devotee. He passed away some time ago. He was in charge of Fiji. His name was Vasudev. A very nice devotee. And he was visiting a temple that I was in charge of. This was in before any of you were born. 1980. I think it was before anybody here was born.
Quite a few of us were very born.
You couldn't be that old. So it was in 1980. He was visiting a temple, and I was a temple president. And I gave him, we had what's called a Lakshmi Conch that I found on the beach. Lakshmi Conch? Anyone's heard of the Lakshmi Conch? It goes in the other direction. It winds in the other direction than a regular conch shell. And it's called a Lakshmi Kanch. If you have a Lakshmi Kanch, it's understood that you're going to have Lakshmi. So, anyway, so I gave him the Lakshmi Kanch. And after I gave him the Lakshmi, I became his best friend in the whole Hare Krishna movement. And then he invited me, years later, to become GBC of Fiji. He was thinking of me like for years and years. So, who is that nice sannyasi I met? So, anyway, getting back to the story, Yudhisthira Maharaj asked the question, why are the devotees of Lord Shiva so rich, and why is Krishna's devotees generally so poor? And it's interesting, that's the chapter 88, in which Krishna tells Yudhisthira the story of Vrikasura, and showing how Lord Shiva is Ashutosha. Lord Shiva is Ashutosha, is easily pleased, easily angered. And sometimes he doesn't think about, when he's giving benedictions, whether those benedictions will be... he's also a pure devotee, and this is also pastime. So don't get this as me criticizing Lord Shiva. But sometimes he doesn't think about the results or the ramifications of giving a particular benediction. And so in that story, there was this one demon named Vrikasura, and he wanted to actually get power and achieve the mercy of Lord Shiva. And so he was undergoing great austerities, and the austerities he was undergoing was to peel off his flesh and offer it into the fire. Can you imagine that? Swaha, swaha. I would not have the courage to do something like that. And so he was peeling off the flesh, offering to the fire, and eventually, Lord Shiva didn't appear. He was getting ready to offer his head, and Lord Shiva said, you don't have to do that. I'm very pleased. What do you want? And he was thinking, I want a benediction, because he wanted to enjoy with Parvati, Lord Shiva's wife. So he thought, I got to get rid of Lord Shiva first. So what he did was he said, I want the benediction that whoever's head I touch will split into like 1,000 or 1,000,000 pieces. In other words, you die. And Lord Shiva said, okay, you got that benediction. And then this Vrikasura said, yes, guess what? I'm going to try it on you first. And so he started to chase after Lord Shiva. And the story goes, he chased everywhere in the material universe. And Lord Shiva finally took shelter at Lord Vishnu's lotus feet and said, save me. And Lord Vishnu sort of chastised him. Why are you giving these benedictions without thinking about it? Every time I have to fill in for you and, cover for you, so to speak. And so, why'd you do this? And then Lord Vishnu takes the form of a brahmachari, a Shiva devotee, Shiva brahmachari, with Rudraksha beads. Those are the beads that devotees of Lord Shiva chant on. So he took the form of the brahmachari. And so this Vrikasura passes by the way, and Lord Shiva, and this brahmachari, who is Lord Vishnu, says, where are you going? And Vrikasura says, I'm going to touch the head of Lord Shiva and cause him to split into 1,000 pieces. And the brahmachari, who is Krishna, says, don't you understand the benedictions from Lord Shiva don't work? He just cheats you. And then Vrikasura says, but what am I to do? And then Lord Vishnu says that actually you're just like wasting your breath and your energy and everything like that. So better you test to see if the benediction works first. And he asked Lord Vishnu, how do I test? And Lord Vishnu said, you touch your own head and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, you can keep chastising Lord Shiva. And if it does work, it works. Logical, pretty logical. So he touches his own head and he dies, obviously. So that story is told in that 88th chapter. And so you see that when one worships the demigods, one gets the fruits pretty quickly. and those fruits may be harmful to you, and even harmful to the particular demigod. Like you see all these different demons, like Ravana. There's many stories. Ravana worshipping Lord Brahma, or Hiranyakashipu, who we just heard about, worshipping Lord Brahma. Kumbhakarna worshipping Lord Brahma, then having to sleep for 6 months and wake up every 6 months. So, but when Krishna does not give benedictions that are harmful to a devotee, and Krishna, in addition, and there's this verse also in that same chapter of the Bhagavatam, Yashaham anugriname hurishe tadanam shanai. For those who I especially favor, I take away everything. Don't worry. That means if people are attached to things, like I mentioned that my ticket, because I was attached. I was really attached. And so I take away things and make it so their friends and relatives reject them, and then they seek out the association of devotees. So Krishna does that. That's a special mercy to his devotees. And in the case of Parikshit Maharaj, who we're reading about too, it's a special mercy. Now you may say, why is it? I understand the pastimes. Krishna wanted Parikshit to hear from Shukadeva Goswami so we could hear the Bhagavatam, like Prabhupada says here. I understand that. But why did poor Parikshit have to suffer like that? I mean, that's another question, just so these pastimes could take place. Why did Arjuna have to suffer just so the pastimes could take place? I mean, Krishna's just using you like a chess man, on the chessboard so that he can entertain everybody. No, it was actually for the good of Parikshit Maharaj that this happened. What do I mean for the good of Parikshit Maharaj? Well, let me make reference to King Kulakshekara. Isn't it? You know the story of King Kulakshekara? He prayed. How did he pray? He let me die young while my voice is not choked up with mucus. Because generally when you're older, there's a lot of mucus. I can imagine dying, trying to chant Hare Krishna. Like that. So, of course, Krishna will take care of his devotee. That's not a problem. You don't have to worry about it. Prabhupada said, even if you can't remember Krishna, Krishna will remember you. So don't worry. If you're engaged in Krishna's service 24 hours a day, there's no problem. You're not going to have to become a deer in your next life. Or maybe you become a cow, but a cow in Krishna Loka. That would not be so bad. So in the case of Parikshit Maharaj, he gladly renounced everything. He could have, as we hear in the Bhagavatam, he could have counteracted all the curses of the Brahmin. I mean, he could, I was always wondered, why didn't he just go back to Samaka Rishi and apologize? It's interesting, Normally, if I'd done something like that, I would have gone back to him and apologized. Please apologize. Please accept my apologies. But he didn't go back because he understood it was the plan of the Lord. He understood that he was going to get the benediction of hearing from the greatest devotee of the Lord, Shukadeva Goswami, and be able to go back to home, back to Godhead. It's not that he was thinking, I want to die, but he was thinking of going along, not fighting against the plan of the Lord. And sometimes it's like that. One has to, in one's own life, sometimes it's really obvious what the plan of the Lord is, and then we fight against it. Because Prabhupada, in his pastimes, he accepted the plan of the Lord. I remember his pastime of trying to open up a center, a preaching center, whatever you may call it, in Jhansi. He actually had a whole center there and people coming on a regular basis. And then all of a sudden, what happened is that this Governor Munchi's wife wanted to turn it into a ladies' place. Nothing wrong with ladies. No, don't get upset with me. But he wanted to turn it into a lady bhavan, and then everything was taken away from Prabhupada. Everything was taken away from Prabhupada. And Prabhupada saw that as the Lord's plan. And indeed it was the Lord's plan, because if everything had been successful in Jhansi, we might not be sitting here today. So Prabhupada accepted as the Lord's plan. Prabhupada accepted his wife selling his Bhagavatams for tea biscuits as the Lord's plan. Prabhupada accepted his wife telling him, "I'd rather have tea than you." And it is painful. It's not that Prabhupada was just like, okay, goodbye. But Prabhupada, sometimes these different things, because Prabhupada loved his family. Of course, as a pure devotee, completely detached, I understand that, but there's normal human emotions there too. So sometimes we're put in these painful situations, and we have to see Krishna behind these painful situations. Yomam pashati sarvatra savram chamai pashati tashaham na pranashami sacha me na pranashati. That's 630 in the Gita. One who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me is never lost to me, nor am I ever lost to him. So we have to see Krishna when these things happen to us. This is similar to the topic of yesterday's class. And then not only do we have to see Krishna, we have to understand what Krishna wants us to do about the circumstance, to see the message, and then to act accordingly. All of us are going to be put into different tests and difficult circumstances like that. And then how do we understand what Krishna wants? If we can't figure it out ourselves, we have the association of devotees. Because when we associate with devotees, not just the spiritual master, but all the advanced devotees, Nadati Prati Granati, Guyam Akyati Prichati. We reveal our minds. Prabhupada said if someone doesn't reveal their mind and confidence, then they eventually go away. We have to be open and honest, like Parikshit Maharaj. He was ready to admit that he made a mistake. He's feeling repentant. How many of us, if we're asked or told about a mistake we made, we'll deny that we made a mistake? Isn't it? It's very common. Oh, I didn't make a mistake. It was your mistake to think that I made a mistake. How many of us will react like that? But Parikshit Maharaj, being humble and honest, was thinking, did I make a mistake? In this particular verse, was the king, was the sage feigning meditation? Making believe he was meditating, or was he actually meditating? Oh my God, I probably made a mistake. So that means being honest. And when we see Krishna doing something to us, going to the other Vaishnavas, like Parikshit Maharaj did, and taking shelter of the other Vaishnavas and taking advice from the other Vaishnavas and acting accordingly to the way Krishna wants, what Krishna wants. And in Prabhupada's pastimes, we see this again and again and again. That Prabhupada was subjected to so much difficulty and failures, ostensibly or externally appeared to be like failures in so many ways. But Prabhupada always saw Krishna behind it. His godbrothers wouldn't support him, so he came to America by himself continually. But he saw Krishna behind them, and he understood what was Krishna's plan. And in addition, there's another point I made in class yesterday, that the reason Krishna does this to a devotee, puts a devotee into such difficulty, is to glorify the devotee. Just like all of us, we'd love to read Prabhupada Leelamrita. It's like a hero's journey. I don't know if you're familiar with that terminology, hero's journey. That a regular person gets a mission, and he gets empowered by the mission, and then he goes out. This there's a person named Joseph Campbell who talked about this in terms of stories. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. He goes out and he does the unthinkable, conquers the unconquerable, and he comes back as a great hero. So Prabhupada's story is the hero's journey. So Prabhupada, he saw all these things, he conquered them all, and it inspires us. I mean, can you imagine, let's say the story of Prabhupada read in a different way, that Prabhupada got the order from his spiritual master when he was 20-something years old, immediately got a $1 million donation from someone, came to America, was received by a whole group of young people who joined immediately, and met with the President of the United States, whoever that was at that time. And Krishna consciousness was declared the world religion, or national religion, sorry. I mean, it's not so exciting story, is it? And maybe it's exciting.
Oh, pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. But it doesn't really inspire you with someone taking challenges, giving you a role model for your own life. Because life doesn't proceed like that. Life doesn't proceed. Life proceeds with a lot of challenges, even the material success. Generally, it's like that. If you read about these very rich people in the world today, how they took so many risks and how so many failures. And Prabhupada's life was like that too. I mean, nothing was a failure because it was always connected to Krishna. Devotee is never a failure. But ostensibly, externally, it may appear to be like a failure. And so Prabhupada's life was like that, And so it's a hero's journey in spite of all the obstacles, the determination, Ekha Kunananda. And like Prabhupada would often comment about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's commentary on this verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Vyavasayatmaka Buddhaya Ekha Kunanandana, that those who are on this path are one-pointed. And Prabhupada said that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, mentioned that one-pointedness is in reference to following the order of the spiritual master. So Prabhupada's whole pastime of overcoming the obstacles portrays the importance of dedication in all circumstances of being focused on the order of the spiritual master. So there's many lessons we can learn because Prabhupada went through those obstacles. Just like here in Parikshit Maharaj, there's many lessons we can learn. Parikshit Maharaj accepted it. He didn't fight against it. He accepted it. All right, I'm going to die. Time to remember Krishna. No lamentation. And then eventually the Bhagavatam was heard. So anyway, these are some of the points I want to make. So any questions or comments or problems or arguments? Yes?
Yeah, Maharaj, you were telling the story about the speeding ticket.
Yeah.
And how it was a slap from Krishna.
Yeah.
And can I offer another perspective?
Yes.
Because if you're speeding next week and the week after that, when the weather conditions were worse or you had other...
To protect me, yeah.
Yeah, Krishna shook you up a little bit to protect you.
Yes, that's true. I mean, that may be another reason. That's another reason.
Yeah.
But internally, I know that I had an enjoying spirit.
Yeah.
I know that because it was a new car, and it could go 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. Because I know the scenario because I was there. And in my little heart, I was thinking, wow, this is fun. But that was my whole consciousness. I was forgetting Krishna. And now, of course, I drive like a little old lady. After that. So the point is, I really know why Krishna did it, because I really had a super enjoying spirit. It was actually a car that I wanted for a long time, and some other disciples got it for me. And it was just like enjoyment, you know. There's no enjoyment in this world except for, you know, whatever. So I definitely saw Krishna behind it. Yes, he was also protecting me from a dangerous situation later on, because now I'm very careful, very, very careful. Also, my heart was skipping a few beats, so I understood that life is very fragile. So I learned a lot of lessons from it. So in other words, we have to see Krishna behind everything. Yes, it's true. Thank you for pointing that out. There's many reasons why Krishna does things. Although he may appear to be cruel in certain circumstances, but he has a purpose. You know, God, I mean, not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. I mean, someone made the point yesterday that sometimes there's a glitch in the programming. I don't agree with that. You were at the class yesterday. That there's nothing that happens by accident. It's not that some demon overrides the law of karma. It's not possible for a demon to I mean, because Mama Maya Durachya, isn't it? Davyesha Gunamaya Mama Maya Durachya, as Krishna says in the Gita. My material energy cannot be overcome. I mean, there's nothing I can do. You know, Krishna's in everyone's heart. He's watching everything I'm doing. He's the super soul. He's the witness. I can't just like put a lead shield over my heart so Krishna can't watch me. Just like if you have a webcam, you all know what a webcam is. You can put something over the webcam so they can't be seen. Because nowadays on the highways there's webcams everywhere. I know in the UK, like every block there's 2 or 3 webcams. So they're watching you at every moment. But Krishna's watching you at every moment. You can't hide from Krishna. That's scary, isn't it? I mean, you go in a closet and shut the door. Krishna's there watching you at every minute. It's enough to make you paranoid. You know, we had... sometimes people are worried in America about taking their animals to the veterinarian because they're afraid that the veterinarian's going to get put a chip in the animal, and then the government is going to actually monitor where the animal is. So people worry, very paranoid. But there's a reason to be paranoid about Krishna. He's watching you at every moment. And so, yes, whatever happens to you, even if you're not Krishna conscious, whatever happens to you has a purpose. Even the punishments that one may undergo due to vikarmic activities, there's a purpose for them. It's not that you're being punished for the sake of punishment. So we talked about this yesterday, like retributive justice. You remember that in class? I was talking about retributive justice means that you get punished just to make you suffer. Like if let's say, Jayananda doesn't pick me up at the airport when he's supposed to pick me up, and then just because he did that, I'm going to make him suffer. That's retribution. Make yourself. You got to fast for 2 days because you didn't pick me up he did pick me up on time. I mean, he had to wait for me like 2 hours. So that's retribution. But restoration would be, let's say if he didn't pick me up at the airport, then I'd have a discussion with him about coming earlier to the airport and to pick me up. You know, just a restoration, more peaceful type of application of justice. Or I would just lie to him and tell him I'm coming 2 hours earlier than I actually coming. That's another way to deal with it. But so whatever Krishna does is restorative. Even his punishments. You know, you hear about the punishment, let's say of eating meat, and then you become well, put it in a Hindu perspective, you become a goat. Then you're there as a goat. And somehow that punishment is not simply to make you suffer, but to make you realize how cruel the activity was when you were in the other direction, or the other part, you were killing the goat. Now you will be killed. You understand? It's called role playing. Krishna is expert. The role of karma, or the rule of karma, is sometimes utilized as role playing. He puts you in the role of the other person you were hurting, or other entity you were hurting, to teach you a lesson. I mean, the punishments in this world oftentimes are retributive. I remember when I was young, if I did something bad, not if, when I did something bad, my mother would say, I'm going to make it so you can't sit for a whole week. That's retributive. It didn't make me good. It made me worse. You understand? It made me more rebellious. But, so anyway, so Krishna, even the law of karma, the point I'm making, even the law of karma is restorative. It's meant for a purpose. That's called teleology, the study of purposes. Everything has a purpose. Even the punishments, or the difficulty a devotee, or even non-devotee put in. So any other questions or comments? Yes?
If you do something wrong, and you understand by yourself that I made really something wrong,
Right.
and you're suffering because of that your whole life, and Krishna doesn't have to punish me or show me I made wrong,
Yeah.
because I understand it by myself.
Yeah. So generally, if you can take care of it yourself, then Krishna will not, doesn't have to restore, because you've already done the restoration yourself. In the case of Parikshit Maharaj, it wasn't a question of restoration, it was a question of what was best for him, because he was already repentant. So he wasn't getting punished per se. He was already, or restored per se. He was already, he wanted to go back to God. He wanted to have that opportunity to hear from Parikshit Maharaj. He wasn't attached to his kingdom. He was in ecstasy. Isn't it? He was in ecstasy. Finally he says, let the snake bird bite me at the end. When he's finished with the Bhagavatam, let the snake bird, or whatever magical thing the Brahman has come up with, bite me. Let's go for it. So, any other questions or comments? No? Yeah. Yes.
It's just a short comment. Actually, I also think for a person who is inclined to take shame trips,
Yeah.
this idea that Krishna is seeing everything, every single moment, is actually super pacifying, because then there is a guru there saying, but Krishna loves you, Krishna understands.
Yeah.
And then that person thinks, I think, okay, Krishna saw this, and still Gurudev says that Krishna loves me, so maybe I can believe that. Maybe I can try to love myself also.
Yeah.
And then the shame is
Very good, yeah. Yeah, it's actually important to love yourself. We're not talking about, just loving your body, sitting in front of a mirror and saying, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the best sannyasi of them all. But but we love, because Krishna loves all of his parts and parcels. We're supposed to love all of Krishna's parts and parcels, and we're one of Krishna's parts and parcels. So, Krishna loves us, and whatever he's doing with us, to us, for us, is for our benefit. Although we may not, sometimes we don't understand why Krishna is putting us in a particular situation until 20 years later. It's called, hindsight is 20/20. 20/20 refers to the perfect vision. Hindsight, looking behind, is 20/20. And I've had that experience in my own life. Why did Krishna do this to me? And then 20 years later, that's why Krishna did it to me. That's why. One instance in my life, I was in charge of a temple, and the political situation got really bad at the temple for some reason or other. It doesn't really matter. And I just said, I'm leaving. Actually, let me be more specific. It was a situation right after Prabhupada left the planet where there were 11 gurus, and if you wanted to be in the movement, you had to be a follower of one of the gurus. It was intense time. It was intense. Now the gurus are kinder and gentler and older. It helps, Gurus get better with age. They're like a good wine, They get better. So.
Rice supposedly ages well too.
What's that?
Rice supposedly gets better with the.
Yes, yeah, definitely. So anyway, what happened was that it was a situation that was intolerable for me, for one reason or other. And I just said, I'm leaving, I'm going somewhere where there's no gurus. Where do you go, there's no gurus? Anyway, I found a place. And so I went there and started preaching, stayed in the movement and everything like that. And now we have a big community and all sorts of things happening there. The whole life developed around there. So it was Krishna's arrangement. And now of course, I'm friendly with everyone, so. And I'm one of the bad guys. I thought, if you can't beat them, join them. So, but many circumstances like that in my life that were extremely painful, even to the point of tears. And now I can understand why Krishna did that to me. In retrospect. Retrospect means looking backwards. So, we should have faith in Krishna. He loves us. Whatever it's for the purpose of bringing us to Him, He doesn't want us to rot in this world any longer than necessary. Any other questions or comments?
We have a handful of your books with us. Would you like to say something about the book?
Which book is that? You're Not the Body book, or? Oh, that book. Yeah, should I say you got me in a humorous mood. I say, you have to buy this or else you're going to hell. I'm saying that's jokingly because.
Okay, you don't say anymore.
I'm actually modeling exactly the opposite of what is in the book. The book. The book is Realize Our Empathic Nature Connected to Krishna. And what happened, just to give a brief summary why I wrote this book, it's based on a series of seminars I've given and around the world. So what happened is that I noticed that a lot of the relationships in ISKCON were really strained. And people were calling each other names, based upon taking things out of context in Shastra, names like Maya Devi or Demon or Rakshasa or Spaced Out or Stupid. We got some of these. Stupid is not a Shastric word. Anyway, Agyani. So I noticed that the relationships were rather strained in our society. Not all relationships, and we have many loving relationships, but there were a lot of difficulties with relationships and misunderstandings that were there. And I tried to understand why this was happening. Obviously, it wasn't the fault of Krishna consciousness, because Krishna consciousness is Krishna consciousness. And then I started studying different psychologists. One of them prominent is called Maslow. Some of you may have heard about him. But anyway, I started studying different psychologists, and I found out that practically every religious society has the same problem. In fact, there was one analysis that something like 75 or 80% of religious people tend to be less empathic than people who are not religious. And I was just thinking, wow, why is that? Well, it has nothing to do with the religion itself. It has to do with the dynamic of designating or labeling people, which we do, which the Christians do, which the Muslims do. You know, the Muslims, if you're not a Muslim, you're a kafir. If you're not a Christian, you're a heathen. I don't know if you've ever heard these words before. But there's derogatory words that people in different religious societies have for people who are not members of religious societies. And we also have our derogatory words. And Krishna himself doesn't have any friends or enemies. What is that? Name dveshos dina prihas, he says in the Bhagavad Gita. You know, he sees everyone equally. Yaya tamam prapajante tam sataiva pajamiham. So I was thinking, you know, there must be a way that we can help devotees overcome this seeing through names, or what we call upadhis in Sanskrit, designations, you know, sarvopadi vinirmuktam, tatpatattvena nirmalam. And there must be someone who's teaching like empathy or how to, you know, break through these barriers. Not only the names, but there's other barriers to communication that I mentioned in the book. And so I came across one psychologist, Marshall Rosenberg, and then I was interested in what he was doing, and I signed up for some of his intensives. And whenever Radhika attended some of those, she was a certified trainer. You still are, right? Not anymore. You're a certified devotee now. So anyway, and so then I got trained basically. I never was a certified trainer or anything like that, but then I adapted his philosophy or his methodology, let's say, to Krishna consciousness, utilizing also Bhaktivinoda Thakur's statements about needs in his Chaitanya Shikshamrita, which very much coincided with the teachings of Marshall Rosenberg, and just adapted everything to a methodology of looking at the world in a different way and being more empathic with each other and loving with each other, because as Prabhupada stated, our movement increases, expands because of loving exchanges between the devotees. Dadati prajigranati guyam akyati prichati bhungte bhojate chaiva. Giving prasadam, accepting prasadam, giving gifts, accepting gifts, revealing the mind in confidence and hearing in confidence from others. These are the loving exchanges. And these exchanges, the operative word is loving. In other words, we have to really love each other in a very, very deep way. And loving each other means basically to understand or to connect with each other's feelings and needs. And anyway, that's the book. Yeah.
I would like to add that your seminars about communication
Yeah.
has personally helped me also to deal with my own internal, how I'm speaking to myself. It's been a long process, but this has really, really helped me.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Gives me some purpose in life to help the devotees. So I've dedicated a lot of my time to basically helping the devotees develop loving relationships with each other. And we have not a large, but a network of devotees now, some of whom are actually teaching this online and teaching different groups. There's one devotee in the United States who's really doing well, Shri Radhika, who you know. And anyway, my idea is to develop a network of devotees who can teach and facilitate this. Okay? So,
John Nanda Prabhu has books, if you would like to purchase
Yeah, I am not making money from this. This is not, I didn't, you got to be careful, go somewhere to give a lecture and to sell your books. That's not the point. I actually make zero profit from selling the books. But Janananda will make some money from it. In fact, I distribute this book as an e-copy to everyone for free, anybody who wants a copy of it. So it's not a money-making endeavor at all.
One can get it from Amazon also, for example.
Yeah, it's,
In Amazon.com and Amazon DE Germany, it's about 50 or 60 kroner. But in Amazon SE, it's 3 times as much.
really? Why?
Amazon SE has some problems.
They charge more taxes, or?
They haven't been able to establish themselves. They're not.
Oh, I see. All right, so, okay, it's probably time for prasadam, isn't it? Because, vacho vegam, manasa krota vegam, jiva vegam, udara pashta vegam. Yeah.
Because I think sometimes it's really easy to analyze. It's Kali Yuga, so often it's, how to say, quarrel hypocrisy is there, and
Yeah.
Kanishka mentality is there. It's not so easy to find a way to deal with it. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, yeah. So, a lot of devotees have been helped by this, and it's one of my main initiatives, to teach this. And, all right, so on that happy note, we should end. It's time for prasadam, so, which is actually more important. All glories to His divine grace, Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai.